Let's get more on those comments from the Treasurer and the Tea Party allusions now with Tom Switzer from the US Studies Centre and editor of The Spectator, no less. There, nice to see you, Tom. Let's just put it into context, really. You know, he's been panned for what he's said. Does it really matter if he's not going to be around for much longer?
If Wayne Swan or Barack Obama?
If Wayne Swan's not around.
Oh, well, look, I think it's just always inappropriate for a high-level Australian political figure to weigh into the internal, sensitive internal political debate of a sovereign state. You may recall more than 5 years ago, Prime Minister John Howard was criticised overwhelmingly, and quite rightly, for criticising the then candidate Barack Obama for his remarks on withdrawing US troops from Iraq. Howard was merely asked a question and he answered it that was in honest keeping with his position and with US policy's position at the time. The difference here is that Wayne Swan is going out of his way to attack a prominent group of legislators that control the House of Representatives and may well control the Senate and in the White House in November. He'd better hope that Mitt Romney loses, because Wayne Swan would probably be persona non grata in official Washington.
It's very interesting because it's come on a day, Tom, that the Federal Treasurer has dismissed calls to cull certain advisers and give public servants more power. Some would say he's kind of backpedaling when he's been faced with perhaps a speech gone wrong. And who wrote that speech?
Well, it just shows a poor judgment on his part. I mean, I wouldn't quite go so far as saying that it's as bad as Gough Whitlam's senior ministers in the Labor government after Richard Nixon's bombing of North Vietnam. You may be too young, Carson, like me to remember this, but some of our viewers will remember that many Labor ministers came out of calling Nixon and Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, warmongers and mass murderers, and this put relations between Washington and Canberra on hold for a while. It's not as bad as that. But look, it was a poor form, and he was trying to make a domestic partisan point about the perils of cutting spending and cutting taxes. That's how I read it, and that's fundamentally what the United States needs. It needs more tax relief to help to make sure that the United States does not go off the fiscal cliff.
Well, let's just understand that debate for where it's at now, Tom. Just who's shaping up to be in the box seat come the end of this long-running campaign? Tell me one that isn't long-running, but the smart money would be on who now? Barack?
Yeah, I mean, Barack Obama is by far the favourite to be re-elected. Bear in mind, it's still less than 6 to 7 weeks before the election. We have all-important debates between Barack Obama and his Republican challenger in October. We still have to see the onslaught of these negative attack ads that we'll see. So I think it's a bit early to say that he's going to be re-elected, because we have to remember that Americans are in an overwhelmingly foul mood. The unemployment rate is 8.1%. The US has been out of a recession since June of 2009, but the US economy is going through its most sluggish economic recovery since the Great Depression. And that's why this debate right now in Congress is so important. The Republicans, and indeed 19 Democrats. I mean, this just shows how fundamentally out of touch Wayne Swan is with the Washington legislative debate. 19 Democrats passed a bill in the House of Representatives to renew the Bush-era tax cuts. This is what it's primarily coming down to, this showdown. And if those tax cuts are not renewed, and that's more than likely if President Obama is re-elected, then it's more than likely the United States will go off the fiscal cliff, and we can expect, according to most economists, a double-dip recession. Of course, a lot depends also on what the Fed does and the impact of its quantitative easing that was announced last week by Ben Bernanke. But nevertheless, in terms of tax fiscal policy, we're in dire straits if the United States legislature and executive branch do not renew the Bush-era tax cuts, because that will amount to a gigantic tax increase.
Well, this is the thing, and you had Lord Blankfein from Goldman Sachs talking about the fact that you cannot austere yourself into higher GDP. Absolutely,
and you have to bear in mind, I mean, the point about the Tea Party, for all their flaws, they have made national debt in the United States a big issue. When President Obama came to the White House, the national debt was $10.6 trillion. Today, it's more than $16 trillion. It's increased by more than $1 trillion for every year of the Obama presidency. All the Tea Party is doing here is putting forward proposals to reduce the debt. You can disagree with some of the Tea Party's outlandish statements on some other issues, but in terms of trying to fix the debt issue and, more importantly, to revive the economy, it's hard to fault them for trying at least.
Well,
and
yeah,
it's certainly inappropriate for a treasurer of another country to be attacking these very people who are trying to resuscitate an ailing American economy.
Tom, if history repeats and we were in this kind of sort of last chance saloon on the economy a couple of years ago, remind viewers as to what happened then. They were at the abyss and something pulled them back from it.
Well, that was a different issue. And that makes me think that perhaps Treasurer Swans got confused. In July and early August of last year, the Tea Party did play hardball tactics with the Democrats in both the House and in the Senate on the question of whether to raise the debt ceiling. Ultimately, there was a compromise, and President Obama signed off on a range of tax cuts and spending increases as part of that compromise. But the Tea Party were widely condemned for playing with fire. Perhaps there was some justification there. But this is a different ballgame altogether. This is about making sure that the Americans don't have to pay a higher tax rate in the early part of next year, which is more than likely guaranteeing a double-dip recession.
Tom, we've got to go. We've got bills to pay, so the lights in that studio stay on. Thank you now so much.
Carson.
Have a great weekend. Talk soon.
You too, mate.